Ok, bonjour à tous, on est en live pour le .NET Conf 2021. Bienvenue à tout le monde. Alors, aujourd'hui, on va parler de .NET Conf. Si vous avez des questions, utilisez le hashtag .NET Conf. Ok. Donc voilà, aujourd'hui, c'est vraiment parler de la plateforme. Ok. Parler de tout ce qui va, on va dire, empower your productivity, your collaboration, votre productivité, votre capacité de collaboration en utilisant les technologies Microsoft. Donc voilà, dans un instant, on va démarrer. Alors, pour ma part, rapidement, je vais vous montrer Visual Studio. Voilà, Visual Studio 2022 que j'ai bel et bien installé. Alors, on va aller à propos. Voilà, Visual Studio 2022 Enterprise Edition. 64 bits, c'est la nouveauté. Il n'y a pas de 32 bits, c'est fini. C'est 64 bits minimum. OK, et voilà, j'ai la licence Enterprise. Donc, vraiment, c'est quelque chose de très important. Alors, donc, aujourd'hui, c'est .NET Conf 2022 qui va commencer, .NET Conf 2021, mais on a lancé Visual Studio 2022. Et aujourd'hui, cette conférence, c'est vraiment pour les développeurs. OK? Uniquement les développeurs. Donc, si vous êtes développeur, cette conférence vous intéresse. Quelles sont les nouveautés au niveau productivity des applications web, des applications MAUI, .NET MAUI. On a tellement parlé de .NET MAUI. Aujourd'hui, vraiment, on va aller deep dive sur .NET MAUI. On va aussi montrer des démos sur Blazor, OK? Les nouveaux composants Blazor, ceux qui veulent faire des single page applications sans utiliser JavaScript, vous pouvez utiliser JavaScript, bien sûr, mais bon, vous pouvez développer aussi un single page application without JavaScript, without JS. Donc, sans plus tarder, je pense que ça va commencer dans un instant. Oui, ça démarre. On y va. Donc voilà, c'est un peu le spot de bienvenue, OK, qui récapitule un peu c'est quoi l'idée. OK, .NET. On va revenir bien sûr sur .NET. On va revenir sur l'historique de .NET. Avant, c'était que sur Windows. OK, impossible d'installer .NET sur un Mac ou sur un Linux. Ensuite, Microsoft a racheté Xamarin. OK, avec .NET, vous avez le BCL, Base Class Library. Ensuite, avec l'acquisition de Xamarin, OK, il y a Mono BCL. Et ensuite, il y a eu .NET Core. Et .NET Core aussi est venu avec Core BCL. Donc voilà, sans plus tarder, je pense que le launch est lancé. Voilà, on va regarder .NET Conf. Boom. Donc on va suivre Scott. Voilà, c'est bon. À tout à l'heure.
Conf 2021. I'm Scott Hunter, the VP of Product at Microsoft on Azure and .NET, and I'm excited to be here today to share all the cool things we built with the community and .NET 6. First off, .NET 6 is a unified platform. That's one SDK, one runtime, one set of base libraries to build all these crazy app types, whether it's cloud, web, desktop, mobile, gaming, IoT, or AI. Once you've learned .NET and you build one of these workloads, you can then build all of them with the same skills. And it goes beyond that. We also have amazing tools. You can use Visual Studio family of tools to build .NET applications with .NET 6. If you want to use a cross-platform editor like VS Code, you can do that. If you want to drop down to the CLI and do everything from the terminal, you can do that. .NET is very flexible. We have an amazing ecosystem of packages, thousands and thousands of packages out there that you can build your apps with. There's a ton of amazing projects in GitHub, and there's an amazing group of component vendors and stuff that build tech on top of .NET. So it's a huge ecosystem, completely unified in .NET 6. Now let's talk about the momentum of our ecosystem. We have over 5.4 million developers using .NET every day in the Visual Studio family of tools. We have been the most loved framework in the Stack Overflow Developer Survey for 3 years in a row. And the Cloud Native Foundation measures the highest velocity projects in GitHub. And you're going to see that .NET has been in the top 30 for many, many years. Now, even cooler, we have over 6.9K community contributors outside of Microsoft that have contributed over 21,000 contributions. And so that's an amazing effort, considering that we only open sourced .NET back in 2014. And so I want to step back and say thank you to all of those contributors for helping us drive .NET forward. Oh, I lost the slide. Button stuck. Okay, so thank you to all those contributors. Next, .NET and Performance. So one of the key tenets of .NET, once we reinvented it back in 2016, has been performance. The reason you should build your applications on .NET is they're going to be the fastest. They're going to run the lowest cost in the cloud. And you can see here, we're still doing really, really well in the Tech and Power benchmark. It's a public benchmark. You can see that we're 10 times faster than Node.js. Your app's going to run very, very fast. But I'm really excited about what we've done in .NET 6. If you look here,
donc ici .NET 6, ok, le framework .NET 6 est 10 fois plus rapide que Node.js. Je pense que les tests l'ont prouvé. Et entre .NET 5 et .NET 6, ok, donc .NET 5 et .NET 6, vous avez plus de 92% de rapidité sur le traitement des requêtes par seconde.
Now let's talk about some of the cool features that we have in .NET 6. First off, I want to lead in and say, go download it now. There's a URL right here, get.net/6, and you can grab that to grab the newest bits. But as I mentioned before, we've got this unified common base libraries and SDKs to build all those app types. We have industry-leading performance. We have simplified development. You know, if you look at development today with things like Python and Node, they make development starting easier. And you're going to see a lot of demos today where we show you how we made .NET 6 the easiest to build new applications with. We've got great new releases of C# and F#. We've got support for Apple Silicon, M1 chip support. And this is a long-term support release, so you can trust it and trust .NET. But we didn't just ship a new version of .NET. Yesterday, we also released Visual Studio 2022. This is the version of Visual Studio that's designed to build .NET applications. And so if you want to go build a great client-side application using a web front end with Blazor, it's got great support for that. If you want to build multi-platform applications using .NET MAUI, it's got support for that. You're going to see some of the really cool features as well today as well. Hot reload, all app types. You know, whatever you're building, whether it's a WinForm application, a WPF application, a web application, we've got hot reload through all those apps. And it even works on things like .NET Framework as well. So that feature persists all of .NET. This release also has great support for Git, whether you want to use Git inside of the IDE for your source control, or you want to actually right-click and have an application, have a GitHub action file, so you can use CI/CD. That's built in all the way from the core of the platform. And it's got IntelliCode. It'll do full statement completions. It'll suggest stuff to you to refactor your application. All of this in .NET and all of this in Visual Studio. Grab it today. Now, I'm really excited about this. You know, we've been shipping these new .NETs since about 2016. That's the first version we shipped, .NET Core 1.0. And we know we have lots of customers out there on our older versions of our frameworks. And so we've built a new tool called the .NET Upgrade Assistant. It's available today. You can see we've had 40,000 people try it in preview. And what it will do is it'll help you take an application, whether it's a ASP.NET MVC, Web API,
donc aujourd'hui, si vous êtes dans .NET 5, dans .NET 5, vous avez la possibilité d'utiliser l'assistant qu'on appelle .NET Upgrade Assistant pour vous permettre de quitter la version X pour aller vers la version 6.1.
It's got support for C# and we just added VB support as well, and it supports .NET 6. And we actually built this tool internally as we would go out and talk to customers. One of them was Episerver, and we helped them port one of their large applications to the newer .NET. But I want to end with something else. If you are using .NET Framework, you should consider moving your tech to the newer tech because it's faster and has the newer features. But you should feel safe to stay there. You can stay on .NET Framework for as long as you want. It's going to be supported as long as Windows is shipping. But I'm excited to announce that we have an update coming for .NET Framework 4.8. It's going to be .NET Framework 4.8.1, and we're going to add ARM64 support to it as well. So you can keep your older applications on .NET Framework and have a path forward into the newer silicon that Windows supports. Now with that, I want to talk about simplified development. And this is kind of what I was highlighting a little bit earlier. Newer languages, get right to code. You don't have to have all the ceremony that we've actually had over the years in .NET. And so first off, when I think about simplified development, I think about hot reload. We all sit in a loop where we write some code, we run it in the IDE, we look at what the output is, we go decide to change the code, so we stop the application, we change some code, we recompile and start again. That cycle is super slow. What if you could just actually start running your application, go in and make a change and push a button in the IDE or save a file if you're in the command line, and the app would actually update and keep all of its states. So this is going to make the inner loop, that's the action, as I said before, making some code changes, rerunning your application super, super fast. We're going to demo that. So less time restarting, more time coding. It's available in the CLI and in Visual Studio 2022, and it works on all project types, including .NET Framework 4.6. But of course, it's going to work best with .NET 6. Next is C#10. These are some of the most exciting features I think we've done in recent years, and you'll see demos all day of these features. One is global usings. If you build an ASP.NET Core application, almost every file is going to start off with this whole list of usings at the top.
Donc voilà, ça c'est quand même très intéressant. Pourquoi? Parce que c'est la nouvelle version de C# qui est C#10. Vous allez voir toutes les nouveautés, la simplicité. Et c'est pas tout. Avec un langage réécrit, simplifié et beaucoup plus poétique, vous allez utiliser un IDE Visual Studio 2022 où ils ont intégré l'intelligence artificielle. C'est-à-dire que quand vous déclarez une classe, on sait pertinemment que très souvent, à 90-95% des cas, vous déclarez la première propriété qui est int, ID, get set. Du coup, il y a l'IntelliCode qui est intégré, qui est parfaitement réécrit, adapté pour vous permettre de coder moins et d'avoir un code qualité.
These are designed for enterprise level applications, and so they can scale to whatever level. But that caused a lot of ceremony to be in the applications. You can see on the screen here, in literally 3 lines of code, I can write a simple API with .NET 6. And these are going to make your life a lot easier, build faster, write less code, less ceremony. It's going to be great. And so I want to start off and switch to my machine here and show a few more things about simplification. So first off, if you've been using .NET for the last couple of years, even getting started as a new developer is a little confusing. If I run this is all the things that when you say .NET New, if you're on .NET 5, you would see. We've simplified that down in .NET 6. Look here. Now all I've got is I've got these basic types here. I can build a web app, a Blazor app, a class library, a console, WinForms, WPF. If I had the Maui workloads installed, they would show up here as well. But this is just a getting started experience is simpler. Let's go take a look at a .NET 5 application. So if I build a console application in .NET 5, it's going to look something like this. Notice here I've got my using statement, which we mentioned before. I've got a namespace, which indents my entire application. I've got this in a class, and then a void static main method right here to do all that. So just to write hello world, I have to have all that stuff. And we've done a bunch of work to simplify that with .NET 6. So I'm going to create a new project. Let's do a console application. And we'll just call it console app 2, that's fine. I want to show us that this is super important. This is a new feature that we don't talk about a lot. If you've been building .NET for the last couple of years, if you're building an ASP.NET application, you could select which version of .NET you wanted to use. If you built a console application, a WinForm application, WPF application, or a class library, you could not do that. And you can see we've added into the File New experience, the ability to basically select the framework you want. And we even show you which ones are long-term support, which ones are current. So it's a much better experience for getting started. So I'm going to click .NET 6. And so let me bump this up. And so now look at this, just the contrast from a .NET 5 application with all that ceremony. A .NET 6 application basically is console, write line, hello world, all in just a single line of code, which is the way it should be. And this is one of the cool features of simplification that we have in .NET 6. And so with that, I'm going to bring Maria up, and she's going to talk about the podcast app that we're going to build during the talk today.
Thank you so much, Scott. So during the course of this keynote, you're going to see us build a podcast application that highlights how we've improved our mobile, desktop, and cloud-native backends in .NET 6 and what you can look forward to. So I'm just going to smooth over to this particular laptop and show you minimal APIs. But before I jump into our podcast application, I'm going to show you how easy it is to get started with minimal APIs. So I'm just going to do File New. I'm going to select a new project. I'm going to select Empty Web. Hit Next. Web Application 1 is a perfectly good name. And I'm going to create it. Now, in just 4 lines of code, you can build a functioning API. Never has it been easier in .NET to do this. It allows us for people to build APIs the way they want to do, allowing for you to build the APIs fast, quick, and get right to the code. So let's go ahead and show you how good these things work together. So I'm going to click on here and show you how the minimal pattern has also transcended into our other templates as well. So I'm going to create a new project by right-clicking on my solution. And I will find that. I'm going to add a new project. I'm going to select Web API. And you'll see that you have the option to build a web API with or without controllers, which shows you how simply these two work perfectly together. And with that being said, let me introduce you to the .NET Podcast API, which is the backend of our application. So I'm going to go over to the .NET Podcast API and notice a couple of things. All the things in dependency injections that you like entity frameworks and OP API, they just work. So I'm going to run this application. And there you have Open API, you have Swagger enabled. These are things that people within .NET Framework love right now. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to execute it, and I get a return of all the categories. But let's say I wanted to return all the episodes. This is another really cool feature that we introduced in the minimal APIs as well, an easy way to build your endpoints. So I'm going to go back to my application. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to add a map get. Now, because I'm an incredibly slow typer, I'm just going to copy and paste it in. I actually copied and pasted it in earlier because I was looking forward to this. But you'll notice that because of improved lambdas, we're able to build these simple endpoints. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce my dear friend Mads, who's going to talk about how the improvements in C# have allowed us to support these minimal patterns.
Hey, Maria.
Hey, Mads, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I'm always great when I look at minimal APIs. I think they're a great example of how we can do language design and API evolution together. One of the things you've shown here is the map gets and map posts here, and they have some pretty significant lambdas. Some of them. You look at, let's see, let's do this map get up here, for instance. That's actually a lot of stuff in a lambda here, and it used to be that when you have a lambda, you have to cast it. You have somewhere that has to be like a delegate type that exactly matches it, which hobbles API design in a way.
Yeah, it looked a bit complicated.
Yeah. So what we said in the language, you know what? The compiler should really figure this out. I'm sure lots of you developers out there have said the same thing. Why can't the compiler figure it out for me? And now it can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of those lambdas. I'm going to sort of pull it into the pit and take the wheels off, and we can just look at what's going on now. So let's take this lambda. Move it up here, put a little semicolon. What you see, first let's hover on the map get. It just takes a delegate. And we can put the Lambda here just to make this all compile. This is so there's not like 100 overloads of mapget. It just takes any delegate.
And this is really the heart of the API experience that we get today.
Yeah. But the problem is delegate didn't used to be enough for the compiler to figure out what to do with the Lambda. But now it can look at all this information, the types coming in, the type coming out, and the fact that it's async, and it can just figure out the right type for it. So if you see the type that it's inferred in the var here is complicated, right? It's a func of several things. The return type is a task because this is async. The compiler figured it all out for you. You didn't have to do it.
Wow. Okay.
And so you can just have one map get instead of having 1,000 or having the user code here cluttered with casts. So that's a really important improvement, I think. Now, let's put this back together and head up to the top of the file. Here's another thing,
Yeah.
the usings. There aren't even actually that many usings here, and we'll get back to that. But typically, ASP.NET, there's a lot of namespaces with a lot of good stuff, and you tend to want to use a large set of them.
Yeah.
And that's on top of every file. So wouldn't it be great if you could just not have it on top of every file and just put it in one place? So let me cut out these usings. And of course, now we're going to get squiggles. But I have another, an ordinary C# file here. I happen to be calling it global usings.
Okay.
But it could be called anything. This could be anywhere in C# code. I'm going to paste my usings here. That's not going to help because they're still only applying in this file. It's not doing anything with them. But now in C#10, you can say global in front, and now they apply to the whole project.
Voila.
Right? And so you just have one place where you keep track of all the usings that you need for this project. And just to show you that it really works, you can see the squiggles have gone away.
C'est vraiment démentiel. C'est-à-dire que les imports que vous voyez en Java, les using que vous voyez en C#,
you noticed, and I mentioned that
si vous utilisez plusieurs bibliothèques, vous allez vous retrouver avec plusieurs using. Donc, du coup, qu'est-ce qu'ils font? Ils vont créer un fichier qui s'appelle global using.cs. À l'intérieur, il va mettre tous les using. Mais ce n'est pas simplement les using de votre fichier, par exemple, person.cs, mais c'est l'ensemble des using.
What's happening here is implicit using.
Vous créez le fichier, mais chaque using doit être accompagné du tag global. Donc, s'il est accompagné de global, dans ce cas-là, vous n'avez plus besoin de using sur le fichier. Même si vous devez, par exemple, importer une bibliothèque, vous cliquez, il va aller importer le using au niveau du fichier global using.cs. Ça, c'est une innovation majeure. Ça permet de mieux se concentrer sur le code et d'avoir une beauté, une lecture simple du code, de se concentrer vraiment sur l'écriture.
In new projects, it's on by default. You can go and turn it off if you don't like it. So there's an enable here. I can turn into a disable, save, and then go back to program and let the compiler catch up. And you see web application, now it lost its color. Now it got its squiggle, it's gone. So the fact that we said, yes, please, which I would always do now, to implicit usings, I'm going to go and do that again.
Donc, du coup, les using doivent, vous devez appliquer ce qu'on appelle le implicit using. Il faut l'activer ou le désactiver. Si vous l'activez, il faut déclarer l'ensemble des using. Si vous le désactivez, il faut utiliser les using sur chaque fichier. Et si vous le désactivez, cela veut dire que sur chaque fichier où il y a using, vous pouvez créer le fichier global et puis vous n'aurez pas à avoir sur chaque classe using system.link, etc. C'est vraiment nickel.
Sometimes you have thousands of lines of class declarations, and they're all indented because of this namespace that they have to live in. So, why don't we just have a syntax for namespaces that applies to the rest of the file without these curlies and this indentation? So I can just say namespace.
Et je rappelle que nous sommes déjà dans le C# 10, donc C# 10.
And just have all my things nicely left aligned.
I love this, and I feel like this is going to resonate so much with people coming to our platform for the first time from other languages as well.
I hope so. And so the one last thing is people really like records. That's a super terse syntax that we're using here as well. It just fits right in. That gives you all the value-based functionality, but it's always a class in C#9. It's implicitly a class. Now in C# 10, you can make it explicitly a class.
Okay.
It doesn't change anything other than you get to say it. But of course, what's more important is that you can also make it a struct. So now you can build value types that have the same terse simplicity and minimalism as classes. So we built that out fully, again, for this minimal experience.
Absolutely amazing. So everything is available to people right now. They can download the .NET SDK, and they can try out everything that you'll be seeing throughout the day. And with that being said, we'll bring Scott back on stage.
Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks, Maria and Mads. That was great. I think all the customers out there are going to really love all the new C# 10 features that make you allow you to write less code for your applications. Let's next talk about cloud development, which is a big thing these days, and .NET is a great platform for building cloud style applications. And so people always ask me, Scott, can you give me some examples of some of the teams inside of Microsoft that are building their applications or their services on top of .NET? And we're going to talk about a few of these today. First off, you can see here, Azure Active Directory Gateway is running on .NET. The App Service Gateway is running on .NET. I'll talk about both of those in a second. Bing.com, if you go to Bing and Bing something, that's running on .NET. If you're hitting a Dynamics 365 web application, well, the gateway in front of that is running on .NET. So you can see that Azure, Bing, Dynamics are all running on .NET. There's lots more as well, but these are a few that we're going to talk about today. Now, I mentioned a second ago that I said the word gateway a few times. A gateway is like a reverse proxy sitting in front of an application. Azure App Service is an example of a place where this happens, and so is Dynamics. And so we were, talking to teams around Microsoft, and they needed a modern reverse proxy. And we thought that would be a great example of something to try to build on top of .NET 6 as a way to make sure that we're continuing to push and drive performance. And so you can see here on the slide, Dynamics, which is running behind YARP, which is now available in 1.0 available to you today. You can see 100 billion requests a month, 7.5 petabytes of data going through this gateway. And it shows you how .NET can scale. So you've got your cloud scale performance, highly extensible and customizable. It runs on a variety of our .NETs. And it's open source and used by us around some of our biggest services. So I'm super excited about this project. The next thing I think about when I think of cloud is, what are some of the common patterns that developers building cloud applications use? One of those is going to be an interior scale web application. That's where you've got a front end with a back end and some database on the back end. And .NET is great for building these applications. It was designed for this kind of stuff. And the second type of application is the microservice style application. This is what's kind of more modern. You hear words like containers and Kubernetes, but the real point of this is breaking your application into more pieces, and each of those pieces can scale up and scale down independently of each other. It also gives your teams a better way of working because they can version each of those components separately. And the cool thing about this is .NET is great for building all these types of applications. So one of the core tenets of our team has been focusing on the N-tier and the microservice style applications, and we'll do a demo of some of that in just a second. If you build those types of applications, Azure is a great place to host them. And I'm happy to announce today that .NET 6 is available in Azure App Service in all regions, both on Windows and Linux. It's available in Azure Static Web Applications as well, with Blazor Webassembly, with AOT support, and it's available in Azure Functions, both in process and isolated models. And so, if you want to take your .NET 6 applications, host them in the cloud, we're ready for you right now. Now, there's a new thing we announced just last week called Azure Container Apps. And as you start thinking about building these microservice applications, we want to make sure that both Azure and .NET is completely ready for you. And so the big thing here is, I mentioned a lot of terms earlier, Docker files, Kubernetes, Helm charts, all these things. I'm an app developer. I want to focus on my app, not the infrastructure. And Azure Container Apps enables me to do just that. I don't have to focus on, it's actually running on Kubernetes, but I don't have to think about Kubernetes and all that stuff. I can just think about my containers, publish them up, and they just work. Now you might ask, well, what does it do for me? It does a lot of things for you. It provides scale. You're going to see a demo of that in a second. It provides the ability for each of these apps to see each other in a microservice world. Each app has to be able to talk to each other, and it enables that because they're running all in the same cluster. It enables you to basically roll forward and roll back your applications. And so that's going to be Azure Container Apps. It's a great way of building .NET applications for Azure. And I'm also excited to announce that with Visual Studio 17.1, that's the preview of the next minor version of Visual Studio. We've already got support for building worker service applications right from Visual Studio. You can publish right to Azure Container Apps. In the next preview version, we're going to add all of the web types. So you can build an ASP.NET Minimal API and easily publish right from Visual Studio.
Azure Container Apps va vous permettre
I'm going to bring up
développer
David and
des
Scott,
applications
and they're going to talk about how they can build these microservice-style applications with .NET.
Donc voilà, c'est le
Thanks, Scott.
la
Hello, Scott.
démonstration qu'on va faire. Scott Anselman.
That's pretty good.
It's a pretty good shirt. This is actually a shirt the team made that actually has the commits, and on the back is actually a bunch of names of the team who built the product.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that shirt.
Voilà, chacun fait la promotion de son t-shirt.
Not for sale.
OK,
All right,
sur .NET.
so let's context setting.
Yep.
We saw Maria and Mads a minute ago, and they were making a minimal backend web API.
Azure
We're building a
Container Apps.
podcasting
Donc voilà, on va assister rapidement à la démonstration.
in this podcasting app.
How
C'est
do we
un
get
use
podcasts in
case
the
qu'ils
first
sont en
place?
train de dénoncer.
Right, so we need to figure out how to get podcasts in the system to actually expose it to our clients.
Okay, so podcasts are usually RSS feeds.
Yep.
The naive thing to do would be to have a client app talk directly to your podcast and get your RSS feed.
Every single time.
Will that scale?
It's expensive, right? So let's not do that. So instead, we want to have the front-end API have an ingestion point where I can send an RSS feed, and it will put it into a background queue because it wants to process that feed to do a whole bunch of things, compute-intensive things.
Okay.
Yep.
So the RSS feed gets sent in and put on a queue, and we don't know whether it's going to be like 1 a minute or 10,000 a minute. We
That's
could
right.
get on Hacker News. It could be a
Could
thing.
be burst. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we need to scale our little startup here.
That's right.
All right.
So we have two applications: the podcast API for the backend and a background worker and a queue in between them.
Background workers have historically been complicated because an ASP.NET app is usually good for like a request came in and a response comes back. This is a long running background thing.
That's right.
And then you just said it has to scale too.
That's right.
Okay, that's kind of hard sometimes.
It is hard. But luckily, we have a first-class thing called a worker service in .NET for these background workers specifically.
Okay. Let's see it.
All right, let's jump to the code now. So let's go into the project. And this is the backend API that Maria and Matt showed. Should we zoom a little bit?
Okay.
The queue client right here is the Azure Stored SDK queue client. I'm adding it to the dependency injection container. And I'm grabbing the connection string from configuration called feed queue.
Okay.
And now we're going to scroll down, all the way down to a minimal endpoint. It's very succinct right here. The v1 piece endpoint is going to inject the queue client via dependency injection in the argument.
Right.
It's very nice. And then we get the RSS feed ingested from the client. The client is sending a post to our endpoint. And we're going to create the queue if it doesn't exist. And then we're going to put a binary serialized payload into the queue. So we've got our injection from the actual client. We're going to put it into the queue, and we're off the races.
So you've posted that to that endpoint, and then you have to ingest it, put it into the queue, and then some workers will pick it up later.
That's right.
All right.
So let's jump to the worker service. And this is a brand new .NET 6 worker service, which is using minimal API style code. There's global usings, top-level statements. So now we have, instead of like 20 lines of code, I think it's like 20. Let's say 4 lines of code, not 24.
24. And I'm noticing,
plus our code.
Like you said, this line 1, like there's no line 0.
Exactly.
Right. We saw what Mads and Maria showed. There's the usings are implicit.
Yep.
We got to outdent instead of indent.
It does feel weird having my code pushed up against the left.
It's too far left.
It is, yeah, it's nice. So I'm configuring access to our local DB, which is SQL Server.
Yeah.
Our queue client is being configured the same way it was configured in the web API.
Right.
And then we're going to just add some code to handle incoming feeds, right, off the queue.
Okay.
So we're going to jump into the worker service.
So we've got this add hosted service worker.
Yep, the thing runs forever in the background, doesn't handle any traffic.
Okay, so this is the actual worker right here.
Yep.
And I'm going to, it's an internal class and it's derived from background service.
Right. So it runs for a long time.
All right.
We grab the queue client, the same one that we got in the REST API. We're dequeuing a message from that.
Yep.
It's going to have a single feed item.
So the feed item comes in, and it goes into a queue, and then I'm just one background service, and I pick it up and I look at it and do some stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then we do some dependency definition magic. We'll skip over.
Yeah.
And then to the important part, we grab the body of the message.
Yep.
Scroll to the right, so a little bit. We convert that thing into from JSON. So we added a JSON payload to the actual queue. And now we're going to grab it as a record. And we can actually deconstruct it. It's pretty cool. A cool feature of records.
What's that?
Yeah.
What are those?
So we grab the record, and we actually pull the properties out without having to do anything else. This is a C#9 feature, I believe.
Nice. So that's an unnamed object. It's a record out there, just like Matt's talked about.
Yep.
Very cool. All right.
And then
so that picks it up.
Yep. And then we ingest into the queue.
All right, but Hunter was talking about cloud native and containers and scale. You just showed me how one worker can pick this thing up and do a thing. What if I want to do it n times?
So if you wanted to, typically what you would do is you would scale out your workers on demand based on the load of the queue size.
Okay.
So if I get hacker news, if I get spam or for some reason,
you could be Hanselman.
You could be okay, sure. You could be Hanselman. You get a big ingestion of queues, and then you would get more worker services to handle the load.
All right. Well, we've heard about containers. How do I get this into a container then?
All right. So first, you have to containerize the application by adding Docker support. But since this is a keynote, this has been done beforehand.
Yep. But we can do it really easily. Just right-click, add Docker support. Cool.
So now we have it for our podcast API and for our worker. There's 2 Docker files there.
Yep.
Right. And now, with Magic Demo Gods, I'm going to show you the live service running in Azure. I'm going to skip that part.
Okay. So we log into the Azure portal.
Azure portal should have
refresh.
Refresh.
Does it log this out because we've been hanging out?
All right. Yay.
It's okay. We took too long before we were waiting. We'll log you back in.
So it's running in Azure. We promise. There's a podcast application.
So we got a resource group.
It's running as an Azure container app because we actually have a microservice.
Cool.
Here's the environment. Scroll down a little bit. You can see 2 applications, the API and the podcast worker, and there's one more that I won't talk about.
Okay, so we got the podcast, we got the ingestion. Cool. Okay, so it's up there in a container.
It's running right now. And now we want to show you web scale. So here's
web scale.
So I have a script that will simulate a ton of users hitting my backend API.
Okay.
And the queue, right now, there's nothing running for the background queue.
Okay, no replicas.
I'm not paying for any compute right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're not famous yet.
It's free.
It costs us nothing.
It's free, right.
All right, let's do it.
So now we're going to hit enter.
So you're simulating traffic right here.
Yep.
You're grabbing.
I got hacker news.
Hopefully
and now,
my podcast.
And now it's going to scale up. Now it's going to scale up. I hope it's going to scale up. It's going to go from 0.
So you just did a bunch of requests, and we've got a replica here. And then how do we know when it succeeds?
It's going to hit 1 at some point.
Okay. Takes a couple, 10, 20 seconds.
It's
probably already happened, right?
It's possible.
So which one of these? This one here?
Yeah, it probably will show up.
Okay. Do we have to run this multiple times?
Let me try one thing.
All right.
Let me try.
And if we figure out something, you're going to run the while statement again?
Yep.
Oh, hey! What?
So we didn't see it move to 3, but it went to 3.
Okay, so you were hoping that would automatically update, but that little sleeper probably fell asleep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that means that it now went from 0, no money, to like 3, and then
money.
when it's done, it'll chill back down to 1 or 2.
That's right. After the whole keynote, it'll be 0.
Right. Very cool. All right, so this will set up
scale, microservices,
container apps,
.NET, container apps, Docker,
long-running background services.
Yep.
So then now our client team is all set up for success.
Yep. Awesome.
Very cool. All right, let's bring it back to Scott.
Thanks, David and Scott.
Excellent, amazing. Donc, vous
let's
avez
talk about client development.
un all-in-one.
So,
Azure,
we shipped
container
Blazor a couple of years ago, and Blazor is a great way of
Donc
building
là, on va passer
full-stack
rapidement à
web
Blazor.
applications with
Il y a
.NET.
énormément de choses
Blazor
avec leur
lets you
hot
build
reload. On va
a
voir
modern client-side application
Blazor Server et Blazor
just using
Webassembly.
C#. You don't have to write any JavaScript at all. And we have 2 models of building Blazor applications. You have a Blazor Server application, which is when you have the full power of .NET, because the app's actually running on a server. And as I make changes to the application, a request is sent down to the server, it sends the state back, and we redraw just the parts of the screen that need to be updated. And so it's an amazing tech because it gives you a super lightweight SPA-style application, hundreds of bytes versus megs. But there's also another flavor of Blazor called Blazor Webassembly. And in Blazor Webassembly, we use the power of Webassembly to run your entire Blazor application directly in the browser. Now, this is kind of cool because an application like this doesn't even require the cloud. You could actually run a full app, like a game or something, that runs totally in the browser with no connection to the back end. And so we offer you these amazing choices of building whatever kind of front-end app you want to build with .NET. It gets a lot better with .NET 6. Those Blazor WebAssembly applications, we actually interpreted them and using a WASM interpreter in .NET 5. With .NET 6, you can compile your entire application before. We call that ahead of time compile, which means the app will run much, much faster and at more native speeds in the browser. Another thing is, I mentioned before, one of the benefits of Blazor Server is small footprints of amount of data that goes to the browser. We've done a lot of work in .NET 6 to reduce the size of a Blazor WebAssembly app as well. And Dan's going to show that in a little bit. And so those are just a few of the things. I'm going to let Dan really do a deep dive into all the cool stuff that's coming in Blazor and .NET 6 in just a second. But I'm also excited about Blazor Fluent UI components. So about a year ago, we started working on Teams, Microsoft Teams. There's a mechanism that you can build apps that can be hosted inside of Microsoft Teams. And if you're a .NET developer, you can build a Teams application using Blazor. And we had to make sure those Teams applications looked appropriate inside of the Teams client. And so Teams is built using something called Fluent UI. It's some UI standards built by Microsoft. And what we've done, you can see here, we've got 40 plus Blazor components that wrap Fluent UI, which allows you to build applications that look amazing and look like modern Microsoft applications using Blazor and .NET. And you can see here, integration with web, Windows, Teams, Office, and more. And I think that maybe they're going to show a little bit of this. I know they're going to show a dark and a light theme thing in a second. But super excited about these new components for Blazor. So you got all the Blazor 6 features, Blazor Fluent UI components. And then, of course, you just can't talk about client with Blazor. We also have to talk about .NET MAUI or .NET Multi-Platform App UI. This is one of the exciting features to me in .NET 6. It's going to ship early next year. And what this is it's an evolution of Xamarin. So Xamarin was a library or a product for building iOS and Android applications on .NET. But we thought, let's take that to the next level. Let's actually let you build apps that run on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. So one single code base can target all of those platforms. We also took the Xamarin and enhanced it again as well. With Xamarin, you had a project for each of these different platforms. Now we have a single unified project. One project can support all of those app types. You can right-click in the IDE and deploy to the various targets you want to do it. And I said it's going to be available next year. Another cool part about MAUI is it's not really a UI stack. If you look here, notice it's on Windows it shows WinUI. On Mac it shows Mac Catalyst, iOS, and Android. What MAUI actually is doing is abstracting each of those platforms and using the actual real underlying technology. So your Windows app, if you build a Windows MAUI app, it looks like Windows. If you build a Mac app, it looks like Mac. And that's one of the cool aspects of this technology. And so I'm super excited about it. It's going to ship early next year. And then we thought, let's take it to the next extreme. I'm a web developer, but just because I'm a web developer, I still might want to have access to a desktop or a device. And so we're going to let you take Blazor and .NET MAUI and merge them together into a single unified stack. So I can build a MAUI application, I can reference a Blazor project, and that lets me build a desktop application using web, which means I can share all my web components across all those different platforms. And so whether you're a web developer or you're a native application developer, you get the best of both worlds in .NET between MAUI and then Blazor and .NET MAUI. So with that, I want to move and talk to a couple of customers that we have running on .NET. And so this is Powered4.tv. It's a startup media company based in the UK, serving 65 countries worldwide. They provide independent, on-demand wrestling content to their viewers. They use Blazor WebAssembly for their front end and ASP.NET Core on Azure, and are very happy with the productivity, performance, and scale. In fact, they've been using .NET 6 release candidates for the live site for a while. Check out Steve's talk later in the conference. Also, I want to talk about ProntoPay. ProntoPay is another startup based in Houston, Texas, that chose to go into production with .NET MAUI because they needed to move fast. They love the simplicity of a single code base that they can build to target multiple devices and the productivity of Visual Studio. And then GE Digital Aviation, they are a group that developed Flightpulse, an app that puts data and analytics in the hands of more than 3,000 Qantas pilots to help them improve safety and efficiency on every flight. The config console is built with Blazor, and they were able to work faster, share more code, and it was a lot more seamless development experience than they had previously had with Angular. And so with that, let's roll a video.
Flying an airplane is no small feat. Commercial pilots must make hundreds of decisions to get passengers to their destinations safely. But what if we could give pilots the tools to make better decisions, to understand how their actions affect critical areas like safety, fuel efficiency, and sustainability? GE Digital created the Flightpulse app to meet this challenge, connecting millions of data points from onboard sensors to give pilots true insight. Built on Microsoft Azure and using Blazor, a framework for developing web UI with C# and .NET, Flightpulse provides crucial flight data to the people who need it most. GE developers built the backend APIs for Flightpulse with ASP.NET Core, and they chose Blazor, a feature of ASP.NET Core, for the UI. Because Blazor uses C# for both client and server code, developers could easily share code and logic between the front and back end. Backed by Blazor and other Microsoft technology, GE was able to work faster and more efficiently, bringing Flightpulse to life in months instead of years. Now pilots can review their post-flight data and make important adjustments. In fact, pilots have increased their performance of fuel efficiency techniques by up to 15%, reducing carbon emissions, putting useful data into pilots' hands.
C'est excellent.
Everyone.
Excellent.
Together, GE Digital and Microsoft are making the skies a better place to be.
Voilà, c'est ce que je vous avais dit. Attention à Blazor. Blazor est en train de faire d'excellentes choses. Blazor aujourd'hui est dans le monde de l'aéronautique. Okay. Donc, comme je l'ai dit, dans Blazor, il y a deux possibilités. Vous pouvez utiliser Blazor Server et Blazor WebAssembly. Donc, c'est très important. Là, on va switcher sur .NET MAUI.
And the Preview 10 adds a few things: Windows App SDK, fully integrated, more controls, performance improvements for Android, and a lot of layout improvements and bug fixes. And as I said before, this is going to ship early next year. And now that we've talked about some of the client technologies, I'm going to bring up Dan to talk about Blazor.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. Well, we just saw how we can build a simple and scalable.
Alors, Daniel Roth, c'est le principal programme manager de l'équipe .NET, mais il travaille spécifiquement sur Blazor. Blazor server-side et Blazor WAS.
So I've got the front-end application here. Let's go ahead and get this running. Go ahead and build, get it going. There it is. All right, so we have this beautiful landing page for the application. It's got a nice, modern, responsive UI. It looks great on big screens and small screens. This page was actually built using ASP.NET Core Razor pages, so it's being dynamically generated on the server. But if we sign into the podcast app, now the podcast app part, this was built using Blazor WebAssembly. So it's running client-side in my browser on a WebAssembly-based .NET runtime. So this is full-stack web development with .NET. Now we've got a bunch of features already implemented. We can check out one of these podcasts. Let's check out the .NET MAUI podcast. We can select an episode. Let's go ahead and play that. Look at that. Yeah, I got in-browser playback. Got a nice jazzy theme song. I'm definitely going to want to listen to that later. So let's go ahead and mark it actually to listen later using this little icon. That will make that episode show up in my listen later list so I can remember to listen to all those podcasts that I want to listen to. We can also go back to the Discover page, and you saw these little plus icons on each of the podcasts. We can select podcasts that we want to subscribe to. Let's subscribe to .NET MAUI, maybe this one. And now I'll get notified when there are new episodes for these podcasts. And I want those to show up here on this subscriptions page, but nothing's showing up there yet because it's not implemented. Let's take care of that now. All right, so I'm going to snap the browser over here to the side with Visual Studio. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room to see the code. All right, so here's the actual subscriptions page.razor file, and you can see I've left myself a little to-do here to actually add some code. We're already loading all of the subscriptions into this show subscriptions variable. So let's render them. So I'm going to delete that, and let's add, I don't know, let's add an unordered list, and then let's do a for each over each item in the show subscriptions. There they are. All right, great. And then inside here, let's render list items for each one. There we go. And after we got that, we'll go ahead and, I don't know, let's just render the title of the podcast just so we get something on the screen. So item.title, there, not title page, I want item.title. Okay, great. So that should be good. We're looking all right here. Yep. So now let's go ahead and click the hot reload button to apply that to our running application. And boom, it just shows up like almost instantaneously. Hot reload will apply my code changes to the running app while it's running without having to rebuild and restart. So you preserve all your app state, you can be productive and code and build your UI quickly. So let's add some more stuff in here. Let's go and let's show the author. I don't know, we'll just throw in an H3 header in here. Item dot, I need an @ sign, so it's actually an item, author, all right? And so this time, instead of using the hot reload button, I've already set up this setting right here where we can hot reload on file save. So I'm gonna hit the save button this time. Oop, looks like I have a bug in my code. What did I do? Oh, yep, a little turd at the end there. There we go. Okay, so we'll save that right here, and boom, hot reloads into the application. Great. We're gonna need some images. So let's do image source equals, and I think on each item, there is an image property that we can use to get the image URL. Let's close that off, save one more time, and we're seeing our images on the screen. Great, so that's hot reload. Now, obviously, we've got some styling issues here. We need to fix that. I've already got a little show card component that's part of this application that I'm going to use to render each show. So let's remove all the stuff that we hand typed before, and let's just put in this custom-made component. What is this doing? Well, let's go to definition to see what it does. In this show card component, we have a card, and it has an action menu. And inside the action menu, that's where we're actually going to render the little plus sign so we can subscribe to each show. And then if we look at the definition for the card, that's pretty simple. That's just divs and rendering the picture and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and hot reload that. We'll save. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So we've got full width images. We got styling for our title and author. We can see the little action on the on each show now. If we unsubscribe, it then disappears from the subscription page. We can add another one back if we want to, and that should then show up on our subscriptions page. Okay, so that's good. It's not quite what I want yet, though. Like, I really would like these podcasts to look like the ones on the Discover page, the sort of grid-like layout. Let's see how that's done on the Discover page. Well, it's got this grid component that it's using to lay out each of the podcasts. So let's just copy that. We'll just reuse that. We can get rid of our unordered list and just put in the grid. Formatting here. And then I think we got to change the code up here. Let's remove this group.value and put in our show subscriptions. So we're iterating over that. And I don't even think we need this T item here because that should be inferred. Okay, now when I save this, oh, okay. Well, Visual Studio now is telling me that this actually was a change that can't be hot reloaded. It was involving a little too much stuff. And that can happen. Some changes are not supported with hot reload. We're working on expanding the set of changes that are. But when it does, Visual Studio will prompt you and let you know, hey, you need to rebuild this application, which is this first option. Or you can go back to editing if you want to fix things up. And there's even this option up here, this checkbox that you can say, you know what? I always want to rebuild whenever this happens, so just go ahead and do that for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the subscriptions page, rebuild and apply the changes. Hopefully if I did everything right, then we should now see our subscriptions nicely laid out in the grid, just like they are on the Discover page. So it's rebuilding and it refreshes the browser for me automatically. Beautiful. All right, that looks exactly like how I want it to. Now, one last thing I want to fix. If I remove all my subscriptions, I'm just going to uncheck these. They disappear. Now I'm left with this blank screen. That's not very nice. Let's add a little bit of UI when we have no subscriptions. Add another little snippet right here that I'm just going to copy and paste, save on some typing. We'll go back to the app. So in this empty results for this grid, we're going to add that little bit of content, and then we'll save that into hot reload one more time. And boom, we got our nice little UI placeholder. We can go back, discover podcasts, subscribe to a couple, and now they show up on our subscriptions page. Awesome. So that's hot reload. You can get productive fast. Looks like this app is ready to publish. Let's go ahead and publish the application. So I'm going to go to the Solution Explorer, right-click on Podcasts Server, the server project, and we're going to publish this application. Now, when we do that, this is a Blazor WebAssembly app. We want to use all of the new optimizations in .NET 6 to make this app nice and small and load fast. Now, in earlier versions of .NET, we could trim the .NET code to remove any code that you weren't using. We would pre-compress the files to make them as small as possible using Brotli compression. But the .NET runtime itself, which was implemented in WebAssembly, was kind of a fixed quantity. Let me show you what I mean. Like in this app, even in development, we can see this. If I F12 to see the browser DevTools, make this a little bit bigger. And let's just clear out the site data so we can see all the files get downloaded. And there's lots of stuff that will be downloaded during development because it's unoptimized. But if we look at the .NET WASM file, the runtime, you know, that guy, it's a little big, you know. I mean, for a runtime, it's pretty impressive that it's only a megabyte. This is only gzip compressed. If you Brotli compress it, it does get smaller, like 700-800 kilobytes. But can we do better? And the answer is yes. In .NET 6, we can. We have this new .NET WebAssembly build tools that you can install with Visual Studio or with the .NET SDK. These build tools do a number of things. They allow us to ahead of time compile our application for much better runtime performance. We can link in native dependencies into our Blazor WebAssembly app. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to relink the runtime to remove stuff that we don't even need. Okay, so I've got the tools installed. So all I have to do is publish. So if I go back to the app, let's actually do that publish now, right-click publish. Now, I've already actually done this before. It does take a little while to run all those optimizations, but we can go ahead to the publish output, and let's run the server. Okay, there it is. Now, when I've done this in the past, typically I hit this caching issue, so we're just going to fix this real quick. This is from the previous demo. We're using the same port as an earlier demo. So I'm just going to right-click, empty cache, and hard refresh. And now when we go to the root of the app, hopefully, okay, we can see the application. Now, if we go to the podcast app, I'm going to leave the browser DevTools up because we want to see that .NET.WASM. There it is. And if we look at its size now, only 350 kilobytes. Dramatic size reduction. So our app loads much faster. We can do even better with .NET 6 by pre-rendering this app from the server. We can take those same Blazor components and render them server-side so that we get HTML and pixels on the screen like almost immediately. And with .NET 6, we can actually take any state that you used while pre-rendering, like you went and fetched all the podcasts, and we can persist that into the page so that it can be reused on the client. Like notice if I refresh this app, refresh, I can just keep refreshing. It loads almost instantly. There's no loading spinner. There's no loading ... That's because it's being pre-rendered. And if we look at the source for the page, the HTML that we got from the server, here's all these divs. These are all the podcasts. They're already rendered into the page. And at the very bottom, there's this Blazor component state. That's the podcast data that we got from the server that we can then reuse on the client. That's state preservation during pre-rendering, new in .NET 6. Last thing, this thing, of course, has got to be a progressive web app. So you can see that Edge is recognizing that it's a progressive web app. It's got a web service worker and a web manifest. So we can install this on our Windows machine. And now we've got a nice native shell. Looks great. You can listen to podcasts. this is now a stunning web application built with .NET 6. But if we really want to deliver an elevated experience to our podcast users, we're actually going to want to have native client apps for mobile and desktop that can take full advantage of the capabilities of those devices and do things that you might even be able to do on the web. And for that, we're going to need .NET MAUI. And that's what Maddie, I think, is going to show us now. Come on out, Maddie.
Thanks, Dan. All right, let me switch over my desktop. Great. So .NET MAUI is the best way to develop apps with .NET and C# and XAML for Windows, Android, iOS, and Mac Catalyst. So your desktop platforms, your mobile platforms, all the things you could possibly want. And right here, I actually have the same app design that you just saw from Dan, but instead of being built with Razor, it is built with C# and .NET. So let's take a look at the Solution Explorer when I find my mouse. You can see it's kind of the MVVM you know and love if you've built a desktop or a mobile app with .NET before. We've got our views and our view models. We've got some other stuff in here for Blazor, and we'll look at that later. And I just have some pages right here, and all the things I could possibly need to build a beautiful app with XAML and .NET and C#. So .NET MAUI, like Scott mentioned, is really built on this foundation of being really, really simple. And so we have one project for you where all of your code lives, and that's right here. That's this Microsoft NetConf 2021 MAUI project. And so it's got one project file where I have all the target frameworks listed using multi-targeting with .NET 6. And I can also set all of the attributes of my application in this one place. So it's just called .NET Pods. I have my app ID, my version 1, because this is the first release of this app. Some target framework stuff for the supported operating systems for the platforms I'm on. And then this is probably my favorite part of .NET MAUI. All of our shared images are declared right here. So we see that we're just including the wildcard folders for these images and fonts, which in my Solution Explorer are right, scroll, resources here. So I have some fonts and images, I have shared strings, I have shared styles, and then I have these SVGs here as well that are called app icon and splash. So with .NET MAUI, you can use SVG files right off the bat. That means they're going to scale perfectly for you no matter what device or resolution you are targeting, and you don't have to mess around with all different types of PNGs and sizes. But something that we do that's really cool is we dynamically create for you app icons and splash screens based on the files you give us and the attributes you set in your project file. So this is just a MAUI image, and you can see it's my resource is the app icon right here. And I have a foreground file. So this app icon back here is actually just a background color. And then I have my foreground file, which is the foreground. So that's the little logo of the podcasts app. And then I just have is app icon true. And that tells the app that when it builds this and bundles it, it makes the package native for the device or the platform that it's running on to use that as the app icon. And same thing with the splash screen.
On va dire en pleine ébullition, et que le conseil général, c'est que tout développeur doit pouvoir se ruer vers .NET MAUI. Pourquoi? Parce que vous pouvez développer une application web. Et au moment de déployer, vous déployez sur un mobile Android, vous déployez sur un mobile iOS et vous pouvez déployer aussi sur un Mac. Donc, c'est vraiment du cross-platform application. Donc, voilà, on va sans plus tarder switcher parce que j'ai aussi une démo à faire. Le lien de l'application est en train de défiler sur l'écran, j'espère, avec le réalisateur. OK. Donc, voilà, nous allons vous dire à demain. Allez-y sur YouTube, tapez Visual Studio ou .NET ou allez directement à .NET Conf, .netconf.net et vous allez avoir tout le live avec vous-même. Donc, je mets .NET Conf. OK. Vous avez aussi la possibilité d'avoir le traducteur, etc., etc. Donc, voilà, il suffit simplement de cliquer ici pour avoir le live. Donc, merci à tous les participants sur YouTube, sur LinkedIn et sur Twitter. OK. Donc, on se dit à demain. On a fait 1 heure, presque 4 à 5 minutes de live. Donc, le .NET Conf continue sur 3 jours, 9, 10, 11, donc du 9 au 11. Donc voilà, on se donne rendez-vous à la prochaine.